Hydrophily. Water is also act as an agent for the pollination. This is called hydrophily, which pollination takes place by the with the help of water is known as hydrophily. Generally, water-loving flowers get such type of pollination. You can be seen in the valleys area. This is commonly found in, especially in submerged ones. Example, Vallisneria, Certophyllum, Hydrilla, Zoostera. Male plant bears large number of small male flowers in a small spadix surrounded by a spathe with a short stalk. Plants are dioecious. Dioecious means female flower, male flower. Both are different plants. Born will be born on different plants. Whereas female flowers solitary, long, slender pedicel. The stalk of the flower elongates and take the flower on the surface of the water. This spathe burst and release the male flowers from the spadix. While still closed, float on the surface of the water. The anther burst sticky pollen grains adhered to the surface of the water of triffid stigmas which thereafter close. As soon the pollination is over, the stalk of female flower spirally coiled and pulls the female flower down into the water. Fruit develops and matures under the water, a little above the bottom. Zoophily. There are so many animals such as birds, squirrel, bats, and snails which are involved in the cross pollination. Zoophily is nothing but animals behave as agents in this pollination. That's it. Pollination by the birds is known, generally it is known as ornithophily. It is common in coral tree Erythrina. In this picture we can be observed that bird's beak is very long. It is possible to pierce inside the flower and get it the pollination. As we going to the another picture, here ornithophile hummingbird is a very small bird trying to pierce the flower and get it the pollination. Chiropterophily. The pollination bring through the bats is known as chiropterophily. This pollination we can observe that Anthocephalus, Kadamba and Bauhinia kegelia plants. This pollination bring through the termites and ants. This kind of pollination we can be seen Prosophis and Acacia, Mimosoidea and some other of Rubiaceae family. Melanchophily. This pollination carried by snails. This kind of pollination we can observe Aspe, Distra, Lurida and chrysanthemum plants, Lemna, water snail and Ericaceae. Kinds of pollination. Pollination is important process which leads to the fertilization, production of seeds and fruits which are responsible for continuity of the plant life. Seeds and fruits are also used as a food for both animals and humans. They make source of vitamins and minerals. Pollination is important, especially cross pollination is important for production of the plants with a combination of characters from two plants. Pollination is also important for the production of hybrid seeds. Contrivances for cross pollination. Certain structural devices favors the cross pollination. There are as follows. Unisexuality. Stamens and carpels lie in separate male and female flowers, either borne by same plant or borne by two separate plants. There are two kinds of unisexuality. The male and female flowers borne on same plant, the plant is said to be monoecious, where male and female flowers borne by one plant, female flowers borne on separate plant. This plant said to be dioecious. Example, Palmyra palm, Carica papaya, Morus alba. In monoecious plants, there may be self and cross pollination, whereas in dioecious, cross pollination is a necessity. Self sterility. In certain plants, the pollen grains are unable to germinate on its own plant. It is noted that some orchid that has an injurious effect on the stigma of same flower. In this case, an application of the pollen grain to the stigma dies and fall off. Abutilon passiflora, Malva prunus, stelpi, steriles. Affect the cross pollination. In these cases, the pollen must be from two such parents differ genetically. Pollination is only method for these cases for setting the seeds. Dichogamy. In many bisexual flowers, stigma and pollen grains mature at different times. This condition is known as dichogamy, as the stigma and pollen grains mature at different times. Dichogamy often checks the self-pollination. There are two types of dichogamy, where gynoecium mature earlier than the anthers of the same flower, and in such cases, stigma receive the pollen grains brought from the another flower. Thus, cross-pollination is indispensable. In Ficus mirabilia magnolia, we can be seen where anther matures earlier than the stigma of the same flower, and hence pollen grains are carried over to the stigma of another flower. In Clerodendron, Hibiscus rosa sinensis, Ebelmoschus esculentum, Helianthus annuus, Coriander satin. In these species can be seen heterostyly. Some plants bear two different forms. One form possesses the long styles, short stamens, while other possess the short stamens, long styles. These are two forms. This kind of bearing flowers is known as heterostyly. In such cases, chances of self-pollination is decreases, whereas chances of cross-pollination increases. In the flowers of this type, cross-pollination readily takes place between the stamens and styles of same flower borne by different flowers. Dimorphic heterostyly is seen in Oxalis, Linum, Polygonum, Fagophragm, Woodfordia, etc. Heterogamy. In some homogamous flowers, there are some structural peculiarities of the floral pods which act as a barrier for self-pollination and thus favor the cross-pollination by insects. Here are cited some important examples. The pollinia located at places they never come in contact with the stigma, only carried away by the insects. The liver mechanism in salvia also promotes the cross-pollination. In Viola tricolor, the stigma is protected by a flap or a lid that prevents the contact between the anther and stigma. When insects come to this flower, this flap pushed aside, then affected the cross-pollination. As of now, contrivances for self-pollination, promoting for the self-pollination. Autogamy, transfer of the pollen grains to the stigma of the same flower is known as autogamy or self-pollination. Autogamy is the closest form of inbreeding. Autogamy leads to the homozygosity. Bisexuality. Presence of bisexual flower is a must for self-pollination. Generally, all bisexual flowers are hermaphrodite flowers only. Homogamy, maturation of the anther and stigma at the same time, is known as homogamy. As a rule, homogamy is essential for the self-pollination. Cliestogamy, when pollination and fertilization occur in unopened flower, is known as cliestogamy. It ensures the self-pollination, prevents the cross-pollination. Some varieties of wheat, barley, oats, and some grass species. Chasmogamy, opening of the flowers after fertilization, is known as chasmogamy. It also promotes the self-pollination, is found in crop like wheat, oats, rice, and barley. Position of anthers. In some species, stigmas are surrounded by the anthers in such a way self-pollination is ensured. Such a situation is found in tomato and brinjal. In some legumes, stamens and stigmas are enclosed by the petals in such a way self-pollination is ensured. Examples are green gram, black gram, soya bean, chickpeas and peas. Advantages and disadvantages of the cross-pollination and self-pollination. Some features are given below. Advantages of the self-pollination. Type of pollination almost certain in bisexual flowers if stamen and carpel mature at same time. Disadvantages of the self-pollination. Continuity of the self-pollination generation definitely weaker progeny. Advantages of cross-pollination. It is always gives rise to healthier offsprings in subsequent generations which are better adapted in the struggle for existence. More abundant and viable seeds are produced. New varieties can be produced by this method. Adaptability to their environment is definitely better by this method. Advantages of cross pollination. The, the plants depend upon external agents for the pollination, such as wind, water, insects, and animals. Various devices are needed to fulfill the needs of outer agencies. There is always considerable waste of pollen where wind is pollinating agent in cross pollination.